Well, good morning and welcome yet again to Iowa Prison Perspectives. My name is Sue Hutchins, and I am here to interview today a juvenile lifer who did over 33 years of incarceration. I believe he was incarcerated from had to be incarcerated from under the age of 18 in order to qualify as a juvenile lifer, and he's been out now for 2 weeks. And so he has a lot to share with you today about his prison experience and about his reentry experience. Once again, this is Iowa Prison Perspectives, and it is a collaboration between Living Beyond the Bars of Iowa, Iowa Justice Action Network, and Iowa Cure. I really would like to hear from you about how you feel about these different interviews that I'm doing, because I'm really doing them specifically to inform you, the public, about prison from all the different perspectives. People who have been in prison, people who have loved ones in prison, people who have worked for the prison system, and people like myself who are advocates for some change in the prison system. I can be reached at Iowa Prison Perspectives at gmail.com. That's IA Prison Perspectives at gmail.com. Like I said a few minutes ago, we're very, very fortunate today to have a young man who spent over 33 years in prison. His name is Brad, and he is here today has volunteered today to share his experience in prison and his experience with reentry, as well as how prison affected his family and his loved ones. So I will turn it over to Brad to have him talk with you about his prison experience. It's all yours, Brad.
Good morning, Sue, and thank you for having me. Um, yeah, so I've been to your point there. I just recently got out of prison after serving 33 and a half years. I was a juvenile lifer, and I was 16 years old when the offense occurred. 17 years old when I came to prison, and that was in 1992. 91 when I caught the case, 1992 when I came to prison. And I've been out actually 3 weeks now. And what a long, crazy road it's been. Yeah, it's, I guess to start out with my prison experience early on, like most people, particularly if you're a child in prison, a juvenile, you go in there and you're scared and you're trying to figure all these things out. How do I survive? How do I live? And in my experience, myself in particular, but most people I've met that come through prison, especially younger prisoners and juveniles in particular, you do everything, your defense mechanisms are up. You're insecure, you're doing everything you can to survive. And so that's how I started out. I got in there thinking to myself, well, if I can be frank here, I'm not going to be, the mindset, I'm not going to be a bitch in
Yes.
here. I'm not going to let people take advantage of me. I'm going to do everything I can. And you overcompensate, actually. You go in there, and there are a lot of dangers in prison, but you definitely, and I did, overcompensate because of your insecurity and your fear. So that's how I started. That's how my experience started. And it's funny how prison works. You start and you realize it's not as hard, ironically enough, to live like that. It actually becomes easy early on when you realize and you start gaining confidence in your abilities, and you're working out, you're hanging out with different people who influence you strongly when you're a child and basically growing up in prison. Let's
Right.
call it what it is. And before you know it, and I'm sure you and many of your viewers already know this, it's a different culture. It's a different subculture in there. And you have uh, 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 those who prey on the prey and those who prey on the prey. That's the
Yeah.
mentality. You have a whole different dynamic than out here. It seems like right is wrong and wrong is right. That's the
Yeah.
culture in a short way of explaining it. And there are things you have to kind of do to survive in there, as far as norms you have to follow. A lot of the common ones: oh, you don't tell on people, you mind your own business. um a lot of the common ones I would think most of your viewers know about. But um at some point, if you're not careful, and it's almost happened, it did happen with me, it almost happened, it did happen, probably a few years in,
Mhm.
you start it becomes so easy, and you become so engulfed in this new way of life, you adopt those
Mhm.
values, and you think, hey,
Yes.
this is right. It doesn't matter what happens. You don't go to the police about it. It doesn't matter if somebody could get hurt or killed, or if it could cause this to happen. That's wrong. To go,
Mm-hmm.
it's
To
not right
go.
to try to make sure somebody's life's protected, or to do the
Right.
right. You don't think like that, and it's one thing to walk a line and, hey, this is a practical reality. I have to live here, but it's another thing to adopt it as, hey, your values, and that's what starts to, especially when you're young. I'm convinced that
Yes.
if you're not careful, that you can adopt those values and get lost. And that happened to me probably within, I would say, 2 or 3 years. You start adopting that way of life, those values, and you hang out with a lot of the wrong people. And fast forward 10 years, and you almost have, at least from my experience, a lack of empathy, a lack of feeling. Everything is, I have such, my family, always had family
Mm-hmm.
support. They've always loved me, and not a person in my family I could never, would never not accept a call. I get visits and all those things. But
Mm-hmm.
it became a situation where remember calling my dad once or twice a month, um, and, hey, how you doing? How's everybody? It was very, very, um, the
Superficial.
yeah, superficial. Absolutely, there was no depth there. There was not much emotion there, because they couldn't understand. I had nothing that's, because I'm almost all prison. You see, at
Mm-hmm.
this point, and I don't want to bring that world to them, and they don't want to hear that world, and so there's not a lot of real social interaction. And you didn't I didn't realize it at first, but there was a day, I think about 10 years in, the 10-year point, and I got in a fight with a buddy of mine in the chow hall, or God knows what. We were both high on weed,
Yeah.
and I think I had taken some pills and stuff, and I don't remember what it was about. It was a friend, but I remember waking up in the segregation shower stall, staring at the wall.
Mhm.
I had acted up in there too, with five misconducts around me, and starting to sober up, and thinking to myself, oh my God, what am I doing?
Yeah.
What am I doing? I almost all my family, none of them had left me, had given up on me, but I had no real connections with them anymore. I don't even know how
Mhm.
it happened. And I'm sitting here looking at this wall, looking at the rust stains in the walls, and I mean, it's a disgusting shower in a segregation block, and I'm thinking, I can't keep doing. If I keep doing this, I got to make a choice at some point. If I keep doing this, I'm going to either end up dead, or I'm going to either end up in a situation where I hurt somebody, or God forbid, somebody
Yes.
else gets killed, you
Mm-hmm.
know, or or I just I it was a choice between life or death, in a sense. I had to make some change, and I knew it, or I'm gonna become this, because I wasn't quite there yet, but it was that crossroads. And at that point, I just realized I didn't want to live like this anymore. I couldn't figure. I'm doing life without parole at the time, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking, well, how do I do this? How do I balance this? I want my family in my life. I realized I needed that, and so I again, it wasn't like a that was a pinnacle where um things changed right away, but I tried to make better efforts toward reaching out to family, old friends. And then I think the real pinnacle where I really seen a huge change in my life was the first real. I mean, you see people leave your life friends, you see people you hear about die, but man, when my grandfather died in 2005, it's still very hard for me
So
to talk.
raw. Mm-hmm.
He was the only one. I mean, people always came up, and every week this guy would come up. He wouldn't say much. He'd feed me and he'd leave, but he was so loyal.
Yes.
And until he got sick toward the end there, he got cancer, and but he died. I got a telegram back then. They were
Oh
actually
my.
doing those still, but I got one, and it just hit me. Not only, I realized, I because at that point I hadn't like taken responsibility for what I'd done either. I just tried to not think about it. I tried. Nobody wants to think about what they've done. To not only to my victim, but to their family. Well, those are the obvious ones. But my family, my
And
community,
society in general.
yeah, the community, society. I mean, you think about it, and I can attest to that, because I've met people here and there, an old teacher, an old friend, and these little things that like they hold guilt. They hold guilt because they'll think, well, wait a minute, man, if I had only done this, I remember
Right.
one teacher of mine, I'm not going to put his name out there, but he came to visit me once, and man, if I had just taken you in, or I knew you were having some problems because I didn't have the best upbringing, I'm not going to, um, I had, they all loved me, but there were issues like in anybody's family. They weren't anything abnormal, but,
Mm-hmm.
but he knew I had some of the, because he was kind of a mentor. And if I had only done this, if I had, I said, dude, I remember telling him that wasn't, you're not to blame, but you can tell them that, but they're going to feel how they feel.
Mm-hmm.
And there's tons of people out there like that. And even the people that, hey, maybe in this community now they're afraid to let their kids go out and have fun or something, because what if something happens to my son or my daughter, or it's getting crazy out there. And so yeah, absolutely. But when my grandfather died, all those things started to hit me. And the biggest thing, I mean, I remember doing two things. Number one, I felt like he could see me, whether he could or
Mm-hmm.
not, I don't know, but I felt like he could see me and like he could just see through me and all that. He thought I was innocent. He went with that lie that I I didn't want to, I mean, that I acquiesced to all those years. And
Mm-hmm.
it just hit me so hard because he was so good to me, man. And I felt like I betrayed him.
Yeah. Yes.
But that being said, it changed me. Those 2 points in a
Mm-hmm.
profound way it needed to happen for me to have the empathy I have to shake me out of this whatever it was that what the prison will I don't like to say prison does it to you, that you embrace. People embrace it and allow because it's easier in a lot of ways. It's easier to be the tough guy in prison, to embrace those values and to have no feelings and not I know if nothing can hurt me than it is to
Well,
take
and
responsibility.
when you're young, your brain
Yeah,
is not developed. You're
yeah,
still developing. And of course, you are affected by your environment. We know that from a psychological perspective and from a medical perspective. The organ, the brain, is very,
yeah.
very susceptible, especially in the teenage years and the early 20s, to environment. That's when we're making decisions about what we're going to hold on to from our younger years and who we want to be as an adult. So, of course, you were very impacted by the environment you were in. Of
Oh,
course, you were.
absolutely. And look, I said this in my alloc- and I stand by this with look, at 16, I won't be the person to say, "Oh, I didn't know when I was wrong." I honestly I knew right and wrong from a
Mhm.
very base level, but you don't appreciate it. You don't appreciate how the permanence of it. You don't appreciate the impact just beyond the individual or individuals, whatever the person's situation might be. You really don't. You don't think about this. You think about the day. You don't realize
Yeah,
where this train's going. You don't see all just how many people are going to get run over by it, let alone especially your own family.
right.
And and I don't think it's possible at that age or even older than that. I mean, I go all the way. I'm gonna and put this all the way into early youth. My personal opinion, based on what the brain science says, but
Hmm.
it's most certainly under 18. You just don't
About
appreciate it.
24, actually. About
Yeah,
24.
yeah, yep. So after that happened, I was like, I was like, you know what? I took responsibility to myself. I didn't necessarily, but I deserve this. That was from my perspective. I don't look
Hmm.
at that from but at the time I was like, I have to deal with this. I brought this um, on myself. I brought this on my family. I brought this on my victim, their family. I did these, and I got to pay for this. And so I mean, I didn't like being in prison. It isn't like I'm like, okay, yeah, yeah. I'm glad I'm here. I don't think that's possible, but I did appreciate like, look, okay, if I have to be here, I understand why I'm here, and I'm going to do the best I can to try to do something with my life while I'm here. And so I started making deeper connections with my family, kind of getting a bigger network of friends on the outside, and tried to balance that with friends in prison. I tried to disassociate myself more from friends I had that maybe weren't doing the right things. And I mean it. There's some people I love in there that aren't doing the right things, and you just have
Hmm.
to find a way because they're not only not good for themselves, they're not good for you, they're not, whether they realize it or not. And you got to respect where people are at. And I get that, but I had to do that, and that's tough. That's tough.
It's
Yeah, there's
true
still
out
people.
here too. That's
Yeah,
very true out
yeah.
here too.
But if you want to change and you want to be of any good to yourself and others, you have to do that.
Hmm.
So I started doing that, and it wasn't overnight. I just little by little, I got educated. I started to educate myself. I became started studying the law and helping people out with that. I eventually uh I got a job as a legal writer. Uh, um, when I was up at Munising, Michigan, I started that. I was there for several years, and eventually it was shortly after that, ironically enough, when I kind of just embraced, hey, and tried to make myself a better self, and just one doing one thing at a time, is when things started to change.
Hmm.
um they started
So it
talking
sounds
about,
like education was a big part
it was
of your
huge.
mind shift.
It was huge, and unfortunately,
Mm.
especially back then, the problem was the funding. I had wanted to go to college and if I had had the funding, I'd have my bachelor's degree, possibly a master's degree by now.
Right.
um but that
Right.
wasn't
And that's a
until,
really important point
yeah.
because there are guys in prison who are very, very bright
Oh
and
yes.
would love to have a really good education and could really contribute to society, not only in the legal areas, but in all areas. And prison, the Department of Correction.
I lost you, Sue. If I'm sorry if you I see you froze up on me. I'm not sure if you're still hearing me on this. Boy. Hey Greg, if she froze up on me, and oh boy, hopefully she can edit this.
We're back on now. We're good.
Okay, hopefully you can edit that, because I was
Yeah.
and
Well,
in
even if
case
it
any of
doesn't
that is
edit,
on.
that happens. Even if it doesn't edit,
Oh,
that happens in real life. I
okay,
mean,
well, and so the audience knows, 3 weeks, by the way, and you drive me back to the point we were at just a minute ago, but I want to say this. 3 weeks, I knew there'd be, and I thought I had an edge because of my job in prison for the last 13 or so years. And I do deal with computers and Microsoft Word, and I do use search engines all the time. I said, okay, yeah, it's going to be different, but I'll get 3 weeks, and I'm still a baby when it comes to this stuff, and I'm learning
yeah,
quickly. But oh my, like that just happened. I didn't know what to do. I had to have my friend Greg here. Thank God he was
to come and
here.
rescue you.
Yeah, I have no clue, and it is that much. It's so different, but and then having this, what the point you were on here, because I did forget. I kind of got sidetracked here with the technology here. You were saying something, and I guess I
Just
lost the
about
point.
education being really, really important, and
Yeah,
that we need to recognize the Department of Corrections as a whole in every state and federally also really needs to make use of what now is federal law that people can apply for the Pell Grant and get a good education while they are in prison. The
it's
best
it,
marker of success when you leave prison is if you have some sort of a purpose and some sort of a life career along with a support network. So I just wanted to throw that in, as we know that about people. We know that about human beings. Some sort of a purpose and a support network are essential to success.
it's key. It's key.
Mhm.
Education in particular. I think faith for everybody has, if people can find that, it really has helped
Mhm.
me out. Um, um, I, but education onto that point first, uh, I tell you, like, I couldn't for so long. There's just no way to fund it. And now it's getting better now. We have Pell Grant back, thank
Right.
God. With one thing good that came out of COVID, as horrible as that was, in the beginning in particular, is some of these things changed to where now and it's slow. It's a slow process,
It is.
bureaucracy, but
Yep.
there's slowly but surely you're seeing that come into the system here in Michigan, hopefully in other states. And it makes a huge difference. and especially with that funding, you get more quality, you get more options in schools, and because you're right, there's brilliant people in here.
Right.
It's and then there's just no way to without that to be able to focus them to shape it so they can find their purpose, and it really does it in itself can change people's lives, you know. Myself and in faith, I think that's important, you know. Everybody, and not any one particular faith. I mean, I think through God's grace, um because I was not a Christian actually till about 2017 and accepted Jesus Christ. But I mean, I've seen other people. I've known people, Protestants. I've known Muslims. I've known from all spectra, and I've seen it change their lives. Really good men. It helps them focus, helps find purpose, and find those other things, and how they can use education, how they can use this for something
Mhm.
other than just okay, I'm taking tests and I did good on this test, or I wrote a paper and I got a no. It really helped me bring focus to my life, and I think that can do wonders if
Right.
you could put quality program, faith programming in, and availability for people, and
Mhm.
and I think Department of Corrections could seriously those 2 things, education and faith programs, that they should really seriously consider, embracing those. There was one in particular that I thought was great, a CureX program, and, it was a Christian program, non-denominational, and I went in there for the food, and I remember going out of there thinking, "Man," I didn't become a Christian overnight, but I remember thinking, "Wow, this was great. These people really cared," and that's it. It's getting connections with these people in the community that are also of
They
faith
care.
communities. It doesn't necessarily have to be, but they care, and
Mhm.
and it changes lives. It really does. If you don't if you want to you know, just go through the motions, make paper programs, then I want no part of that, because there's plenty of paper programs that don't do any good. You
Right.
need real people with real volunteers that really care, and with the departments of corrections throughout the different states and then in the federal system that will co-op with them and come up with things that are safe and for everybody, but at the same time, really people need to find that they're valued. That's what it boils down to, and if they feel like
Right.
they're not valued, they're not gonna take any program seriously. I don't care how good it looks on paper.
Well, and the community is so important, community
oh,
involvement,
yeah.
whatever community that is. Like you say, people that care, people that you can count on their character, because that helps build your character if that's what you're looking for. I mean, we are a reflection of the people we hang out with the most. That's just the way life is. That's just the way life works.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, water seeks its own level, and
and
that's just true.
and when you see and you're so it's such a good point because in prison, everybody's looking for an angle. You know, you still you
Mhm.
could out here, you find it a little bit. I've actually
Sure. Of
come
course.
along because of some of these people. I'm fortunate enough to come out and say not everybody's like that. Not everybody's just looking. Some people are
Right.
actually doing it because they feel like they're blessing you. You'll pay it forward.
Right.
There are good people out here. It's not
Right.
all negative and everybody's on shenanigans. You have to. I mean, I would. You don't. People can do what they want, but you will be best served, all of us, if you give people a chance. Those people, and you can tell if you've been in here long enough, you know, and you sit down and get the time
Yeah.
to know some of these people, you'll be able to tell the difference. Because one thing about prison I can
Right.
tell you too, Sue, is you
Right.
really learn about people. You learn to understand their and they're so, but you got to give them a chance. You know, you can't just assume. And because if you're going to assume everybody's, you know, they're in it for the money or they're doing it for this reason or that reason, you're gonna miss a pot of gold because it will change your life. It will change other people's lives you interact with, and that's why they do it. You know?
Right.
Yeah,
And we did talk last night for a bit, and we talked about we give away what we need to keep. We really gain more by giving
yeah,
than the person that we're giving to. I mean, that's
absolutely.
how we keep what we need, is by giving it away. That's just the way you keep it, is by giving it away. And we teach best what we need to learn most. That's just the truth. And every time I help somebody else, I'm helping myself equally. And oftentimes, I'm helping myself more, because we all listen to our own voice more than we listen to anybody else. That's just the way we're designed as human beings. So
Yeah.
whatever we tell ourselves is what we believe, and that's what we begin to live. So it's a very important point that you make, how important it is to associate yourself with people of like mind. Whether it's
Yeah.
good or bad, associate yourself with people of like mind, and you will become that. You will
Yeah.
become what you practice being.
Yeah, absolutely.
Could you talk a little bit now about your reentry process, the plans that you had and the reality of reentry?
Okay, so yeah, and that kind of actually by the last stage of my story there, where I was became paralegal, a legal writer, and I actually eventually went to and got my paralegal certification. I started going to college. I've accumulated 42 credit hours so far. Expect hopefully before the end of the next by the end of next year, I'll have my associates, and then I'll go on to get my bachelor's. But my entry process, because there wasn't very much
Yeah.
quality programming, and my well, toward the end it's gotten better. To be fair to the Michigan Department of Corrections, it has, and I'll go into that a little bit. But before then, especially when you're at the time when you were a lifer, you didn't lifers weren't juvenile lifers even until toward the end there, towards like the latter end of the 2010s, like around 2018, 2019-ish, after Montgomery versus Louisiana decision came out. There weren't a lot of it was hard. If you were a lifer, you almost it didn't matter. They did not want you in programs. You had to, and so I did everything I could within the means that I could through being a legal writer, through an opportunity. I took advantage of them. And that was my initial my what I did to try to prepare. Toward the end there, the DOC, they do have actually it's called well, it used to be called I'm drawing a blank here. It's called offender success now. That's what it's called now. And what they do, especially if you've been in a long time, they try to make sure, if anything, you get out of here with all your documents. So I was fortunate. I had my state ID. I went through that months before. I had got my social security card. I got
Mhm.
um, um, my birth certificate, all those things I kind of had leaving here, and
Good.
Medicaid card. So I had to step up on that. But even that, there's bureaucracies and loops you got to go through when you get out of here to,
Sure. Yep.
and unfortunately, I did through my own. The DOC didn't provide this through a state appellate defender's office, and a friend of mine, in fact, Greg Wines, who worked there, gave me one of their reentry books, and so I started going through that, and I started taking notes, and like you said, I started making all these plans. This is what I'm going to do, and I'm a guy that writes, oh, okay, things, to-do lists, and I create schedules and all this stuff, and it worked great when you know how the process when you've been doing for 20 years, 30 years.
Mhm.
But I created, okay, 2 week lists, and I had all these things. This is what we're gonna
Mhm.
do, and I think maybe two or three of them got done as planned on the time slots that I put down there, and it was just like
Yes.
it
Mhm.
was chaos, and it was organized chaos, but it did not go as planned. It wasn't bad. It's just things are so busy. There's so much, and you're trying to soak all this in. I remember, okay, so I keep bringing Greg Wines up because and this is the type of guy he is, and this is like you mean about wanting to help somebody out, wanting to pay it forward. He was one of
Mhm.
the, along with my uncle, came to pick me up. We went to breakfast and had Denny's, had a big, emotional, there's a lot of family members. Then he drove me up to my parole agent. And, um, I'm sitting there trying to get in the car. That was the first thing I remember doing. And I couldn't open the little thing like
You
that,
didn't
open
know
the
how.
car. They're so different than I remember them.
Yep.
If a
Yep.
seatbelt, it took me 5 minutes to get the damn seatbelt on. I mean, it was
Yep.
like, what the?
What is this?
Yes, and I mean, wait a minute. I wore a seatbelt all the time when I was out there. Why is this so difficult? It's those things, or okay, in prison you have a certain type of clothing. You know where certain things are. You have your own debt. You don't. All that's gone. So you got to figure out. I lost my phone 3, 4, 5 times in an hour.
Uh-huh.
And so, yeah, I guess to your main point, I did all these things to try to prepare. I thought I did good, and I think, oh, I'm a smart guy. I'm somewhat educated. I've been doing this. Yeah, it's going to be hectic, and I'm going to go through speed bumps. But I did not. There's no way I think you can prepare for it. And I think we talked
Right.
about that
Right.
because you're going into a completely different pool. You're going from a little goldfish bowl, and they're throwing you into an ocean, and you don't know any of the environment out there. It's like, and you have to relearn even the stuff you once knew to some degree. You have to relearn it. It's like being a baby. It really is the best analogy I can tell you. I felt like a baby. I in some instances I felt like an idiot. Like and I remember Greg took me to Sam's Club. Like this was, you might as well have been Disney World for him, but he's got a purpose. He's reliving what he went through, and he's, hey, isn't it great to be out here and to see all these things? And but he's showing me stuff too. The simplest thing, like how to use a debit card, and so yeah,
Mhm.
it's, and I'm still learning. I've learned quite a bit, but I have a long way to go. I'm under no illusions, and I think, and we talked about this a little bit before too, that therapy is essential. I've only been out 3 weeks. I'm definitely going to set up, and even though I have a huge network and I talk with a lot of, and we kind of have our own therapy, I do need somebody independent, and I do need to, because it's like you brought at the beginning of the podcast here. I'm still very much in the very beginning stages. I don't even have any idea what's to come ahead yet,
Mhm.
and I need to. I think it should be mandatory for everybody personally, especially if you've been a long indeterminate sentence or a life you've been in 20 years. I can't imagine why you wouldn't want to um,
Mhm.
do that. It doesn't have to be if you have no real mental health background every day or once a month at least. Just keep track. Hey, see what's going
Yes.
on, and so you can have some objective feedback on a family member, or a friend, or even as well-meaning as they might be. I think it should be mandatory. I really do, and I am going to look into that, and but yeah,
Good for you. I really support that. Obviously, as a retired therapist, I really support that
yeah,
because of the trauma. Even if you didn't have trauma in your life prior to prison, which everybody does have different degrees of trauma. Just being alive, you have different degrees of trauma. But prison is very traumatic, and coming out of prison is like a foreign country if you've done
yeah.
any amount of time. And and
I,
and our brain, in the process of adapting from one world to another world, it helps to have somebody who you have no emotional contact connection with, who's not a family member, who owes you nothing, who you owe nothing, to really talk things over with and get some a perspective of feedback that you can't get from people who love and care about you.
You're absolutely, I agree 100%. And your analogy about it's like being in another world. I've used this so many times and it fits so well.
Mhm.
Now, some of your younger viewers might not remember this, but you will, and you'll appreciate this. It literally, especially if you've been in 30 years, like a life or a long indeterminate sentence, it
Right.
really is like going from the Flintstones to the Jetsons. It's that
Yep.
vastly different. So people that remember
Yep.
those programs, they can appreciate that. It's almost literal. That's that different. And there's no way to prepare for it. You can certainly do a lot of things with programming to
Yes.
try to do to make people more prepared for it, to make them more likely to succeed and not just be out and not recidivism, not coming back's great, but I want more than that for people. I want people to get out. Great, he's never going to come back and he's never going to hurt anybody, or she, but I want them to go out there and do like things like people I know are doing. I want them to get out there and realize, yes, you need to forgive yourself for what you did, but that doesn't mean you're off the hook. Especially if you killed somebody, you owe society,
Mhm.
and you should want to help. You should want to go out there and help somebody else like me or somebody else down the road to make sure that they're on the right track, that you're making a difference, and it was, at least it was for something that you can help shape society in some better way when we're gone. That people will be better off. I feel very strongly about that, and I think a lot of people, if they could give them the tools, they would want to do that. It have been through that. I really do. I really
I do
do.
too.
Yeah.
I do too. I do too. I agree with you 100%.
I One other point, at least I can remember that I don't think we touched on, at least from my end, is I think you wanted me to talk about recommendations um of what departments of corrections should do. Um and the obvious programming, education, community and volunteer involvement in that. Um, um, but one thing that's really important, at least in Michigan, from my perspective, from being in there, that I see all too often. Oh shoot! I think I just lost you, Sue. I'll just keep
No.
going. Okay, you're back. So one thing from my perspective in Michigan prisons, and I'm assuming, although I don't know, I'm assuming it's like this in most, is it's great to have these programs, and then in Michigan there's little islands. I was on a little island the last 4 years, which mean what I mean by that is it wasn't like a normal prison. You had the place I was at. I was a legal writer there. It was RGC, which is Reception and Guidance Center, which is where everybody comes in when they first come in. But I was kind of in a unit to the side because the prison hospital's also there, and then the unit like what I was in called C unit. They have most of the guys there are people that need to be close to the prison hospital because they're really sick. They need oxygen tanks. A lot of them have cancer. Most of them are not in good shape. And then everybody upstairs in that unit were workers, right? So it wasn't like a normal prison environment. And it almost kind of helped. I'm glad I went there because it helped you to some degree. It helped you prepare a little bit to come out here. But those places are
Mhm.
far and few between. Those are outliers. These places where you don't have all the gang politics and all the vast amount of drugs coming in, and some of these drugs nowadays they have people acting crazy. They're different than how I remember them.
It's
But
horrifying.
it's gotten really crazy. The gangs have
Mhm.
gotten much worse in prison, and it's getting to the point. I don't think it's there yet in Michigan where if it keeps going in this track 10 years from now, you're not going to have a choice coming. I see that where you're going to have to play that game to survive and get through it.
Mhm.
And that's not conducive to rehabilitation. They don't have
Right.
it under control. Michigan in particular is hugely understaffed because um it used to be a
So is
good,
Iowa.
yeah,
So is
and
Iowa.
and now a lot of prison reform advocates won't feel this way, and I can respect that, and I can understand it if you've been in. But honestly, part of the reason is because you need quality staffing. To get quality
Right.
staffing, you have to pay for it. You have to give them the benefits. I mean, it's yeah. I said it too. Oh, this is such an easy job. Well, most of the time, but it's stressful. Look, if you want people to do their job, to do it right, to not be on shenanigans, to actually care, that care about not losing this job, I feel about holding them to account. But hey, give them the carrot too. If they're doing what they're supposed to do, get them out of there. If
Mhm.
they're not, they shouldn't be in there because they're going to cause staff like that cause themselves. They bring they put themselves and their peers in jeopardy. But not just to mention us, get them out. But you want to keep good people in there, people that will do their job, keep it secure and safe. But at the same time, you can count on to treat people with dignity, with respect, to respect the programming processes and all those things. And it costs a little bit of money to do that. You
Right. You
need
get what you pay for.
Yes, right. And so you could downsize the department with letting people out that don't need to be there. That's the part of it. But you need to also the
Right.
people that are there. You want to make sure they want to work there. They want to, hey, like they feel like it's worth it. It's worth it to go to work every day. So it's worth it. I'm not just going to go here and get on and be on the internet because they're internet all day because there's going to be consequences. I don't want to lose this job. I don't want to lose my benefits. I don't want to lose, you know, you want to make it worthwhile to them and where they don't feel like, hey, there's not enough staff, so I have to work another 16-hour shift. I don't
Right.
want to work.
And
I
no
got a
choice
family.
in that. No choice in that. If they tell
Yeah,
me at the last minute that I have to work another shift, nope, doesn't matter what
yeah,
if I want to keep my job, I have to work.
yep.
Yeah.
And I can't speak for other states, but that's how Michigan is right now. And in
That's
fact,
how Iowa is
RBC,
also. That's
it's
how
a
Iowa
day.
is. And they're hiring people young, 19 years
Yeah,
old, young people
and it's
who
very
don't know
hard.
about life, let alone prison.
Yes, and it's very hard to get fired because they don't want to let you go because
Exactly.
they're having a recruitment problem,
They
and
need
it's just
bodies there. They need bodies there.
yeah, it's becoming a dangerous situation in some places, frankly.
Yes, it is.
It is.
Yeah,
And
it is.
and it's already for prisoners. Someday staff are going to get hurt because of somebody that doesn't know what they're doing or doesn't do it's a matter of time, and then they'll make changes when a staff, ironically. But so those are two recommend. The other recommendation is because these prisons are the dynamics change since when I first come down, and you have this a different type of prisoner come, especially it's the short termers are usually the ones causing most of the problems, and
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
because it's so different, you need to find a way. Now you need smarter people than me to think tank this, but you need to find a way to be able to create more islands. like I talked about earlier. You need to find a way that, hey, to give people a chance. I want everybody, after being vetted, to give a chance. But hey, we'll put you on this island that has these carrots, and not just like superficial carrots, but we're going to treat you with respect, with dignity. We're going to find a way to train you. We're going to provide you the faith programming that you need, and it's going to be helpful to keep you on track. We're going to have a quality college, because it's great. You can have these Pell Grants everywhere, but if people can't stay, because people there's all this madness going around them, and gang politics is going to outweigh any good these are going to do. What's the point? You need a place where people that are serious, that want to get away from that they are protected and feel safe and can do these things. And there's always going to be a little prison. You can't complete, but you can really minimize it. And I've been to places, but they're islands. They're very far and few between,
Mhm.
and they need to do something to have a better classification process that accounts for that. And so there's things that need to be done. Those are the biggest thing, the things I feel strongly about and that I think would be most effective. Creating those islands, creating a classification system that where people can go and get a lot of these programs that we've been discussing through the program, and will there be a benefit to them? They're still not stuck in this prison cultural mindset that they have to follow. And it might not. It's going to be that way within 10 years in Michigan. It's that way in some prison systems. That's already that way. But I think not just Michigan, but states throughout the United States, if they could find a way to better classify and create those islands, you see a lot more successes. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Do you think that it would be helpful to have people who have lived experience of prison doing some of those programs, writing some of those programs, and presenting some of those programs?
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's thoroughly vetted, and they've got a record behind them. I mean, look,
Yes,
I don't want just anybody, even me. Just to be thrown in and throw us backwards.
right,
I want to hold us to account more than anybody because I feel so strongly about it. You make one mistake and we go back 10 years. I
right,
don't want that. But
right.
you need that. You need people that understand, and in fact, I've gotten the support I'm able to get from people that like Greg, and people he's introduced me to in the community. It's just profound because they understand you in a way like is
Nobody else can.
yeah,
Yeah, you
you
can't
can,
understand it if you haven't been there.
yeah, and like you're doing great work and you do what you can, but it's from your perspective.
Right,
And and for our part, we need people that we can work with from our perspective. We can co-op with all these
exactly.
other groups, and I'm great, and it's great, but ultimately our success in large part can be vastly increased the odds of our, like I said, not only staying out. I don't think that's hard if you've got to, but success, making your life worthwhile, especially if you've done something really bad to get you in here. um these circles are so important because they're real people. They're not just out here on some game. These are real people. They're people with empathy, people with integrity, and
Mhm,
they're out here, and a lot of people don't realize that. They don't realize
right,
it, but if you can see it and you can see how they live, and that's so important. Just seeing how they live, what they do, with no expectation, it attracts you to it, and it inspires you. And
mhm,
I mean, I was inspired before I got out here. Since I got out here, it's inspired me more. It makes me feel more responsible. Like I have a responsibility even more now to somehow do
mhm,
something more than just not come back to prison. And
mhm,
and if I can get somebody someday to feel like that, you can make huge change. You might not even see a lot of it, but
right,
you're putting it out there. You're creating those ripples in the pond, and it's very
exactly,
important. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. Well, our time is about up, and I think we've covered what we wanted to cover today. Do you feel like there's anything that you have not said that you want to be sure to say before we close?
Well, first I thanks for letting me come on your podcast. I appreciate the opportunity. I was a little nervous about
Yeah,
coming on, of course. Yeah,
you did great. You did
well,
great.
I just hope that um that the people out there, whether you're in law enforcement, whether you're in corrections, um, um, whether you're in people that have family in prison, prisoners themselves, we can find solutions. We can get with people that can make
Mhm.
these decisions happen, and we can. There's so much to be had with cooperation with around these groups that can make these things happen. It might not happen overnight. Nothing happens overnight. It's we got, but it can be done, and I think they're important. I think they're not just to benefit of people like me; they're to benefit of society. I think you can make a better
Exactly.
and safer correction system with some of these solutions, and you certainly can make society overall safer if you have these, as opposed to just putting people in prison and giving them no resources and just here's $50, good luck, pal. You know, those days you want to make a society unsafe. Let's continue that route. And so I think I just appreciate the opportunity, and then hopefully um somebody got something out of my experience the way I've been
Mhm.
able to get from other people's experiences, because it's helped me. So yeah.
Well, and thank you. Thank you very much for sharing your experience and for being willing and for being who you are. And I wish you nothing but the best, and I hope we can stay in touch over time. That would be nice, and get back together in 6 months or a year or whatever and see how things have gone for you and
Well,
for Greg
absolutely.
also. Yeah, because
Absolutely.
I
Thank
think
you for the
that's important,
opportunity.
you know.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut, but thank you for the opportunity. And absolutely, definitely in a year for sure, maybe 6 months, but we already talked about the year. That'll be
Right,
another show for
right,
sure. Yeah.
right, right. So, okay. Well, thank you very much, and I wish you nothing but the best in your journey and hope to talk to you again soon. Um, As I said before, my name is Sue Hutchins, and I am with both the Living Beyond the Bars of Iowa, the Iowa Justice Action Network, and Iowa Cure. This is a collaboration between those three organizations to inform you, the public, about prison in Iowa and surrounding states from a variety of different perspectives. So if you have any comments, I would love to hear from you, whether you agree with what I'm doing, whether you disagree with what I'm doing, if you feel like you would like to be interviewed, if you know somebody who you think ought to be interviewed, please contact me. I can be reached at iowaprisonperspectives@gmail.com, and that's iaprisonperspectives@gmail.com. Thank you very much for joining. I hope you will subscribe, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Take care and goodbye for now.